When my wife, Sarah, was out celebrating with her closest guy friend from work, I threw together my bags, left the divorce papers lying around, and walked out the door. Before I left, I couldn't help but send a message on WeChat saying, "I'm gone, making room for you." Half an hour later, she called me up. "Alex, are you done causing trouble yet?" I couldn't help but laugh. "I don't need you anymore, and I couldn't care less who you're with," even though it was obvious she was freaking out. On my birthday, I drove Sarah to her office. Just before I dropped her off, I said, "It's my birthday today. Come back early. I need to talk to you." She stayed quiet for a bit before finally agreeing. I'd been married to Sarah for 3 years. She was a senior executive at a big public company, while I worked part-time as a designer, picking up projects here and there. I made a decent living, but it was nothing compared to Sarah's earnings. Most guys would feel the pressure when their wife makes more, but not me. I first met Sarah when I was 16. It was love at first sight. She was 3 years older and came back to our high school as a standout senior to give a speech. Her delicate features stayed with me, the way she glowed in the sunlight like a fairy. After her talk, I tried to get a photo with her, but there were too many people around. In a panic, I shouted, "Miss Fairy!" She turned and smiled, and I quickly snapped a picture. That was my first photo of her. I followed her to the same university, becoming her junior. It took 3 years of persistence before she agreed to date me. If her family hadn't pushed her to get married, I never would have had the chance to marry her. But after tying the knot, I realized that some hearts just can't be warmed. On my birthday, I ordered a cake and cooked dinner, waiting for her to come home. From 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., she still hadn't returned. I couldn't hold back and called her, but there was no answer. Just when I couldn't wait any longer, Mike sent me a video. In the video, Sarah was hugging him and laughing with colleagues around. Everyone seemed happy, popping champagne. "Alex, Sarah closed the deal for the B-City project and is celebrating. Don't kill the vibe." Mike's message shattered the last bit of hope I had. I should have seen this coming. Sarah always put me last. I didn't reply. Instead, I reheated the food and ate alone, then lit the candles and blew them out, making a wish. When I was 16, I wished to be with Sarah forever. Now, at 26, I wished to let her go, and let myself go too. A year ago, I noticed Sarah's relationship with Mike was more than just friendship. He was her go-to whenever she was tired or dealing with a tough case, stepping in to make things easier. At first, I thought Mike was just her right-hand man, but his looks at her were anything but innocent. Their actions crossed the line of normal friendship. I started getting anonymous messages, and my phone was flooded with intimate photos of them. The first time I saw them, I panicked and confronted Sarah. She seemed annoyed. "Alex, it's just a hug. He's my friend. Don't make a scene." I told her to keep her distance from him, even arranging for someone to hug her to provoke her. But Sarah saw through me and ignored me for a week, showing me that threatening her wouldn't work. After that, I stopped causing trouble. But secretly, I promised myself that once I reached 100 photos, I'd leave. It hadn't hit 100 yet, but I couldn't take it anymore. Each photo felt like a knife, cutting into me, leaving wounds that bled and blurred. At midnight, Sarah still hadn't come home. My birthday had passed, and the things I wanted to say no longer mattered. I packed my bags, left the divorce papers, and left without hesitation. Some things, if you don't do them now, you'll never get the chance. The next morning, I took the earliest flight to the capital. Not just for sightseeing, but for something important. Dr. Chen at the Capital Medical University's neurosurgery department is the best in the country. If you go there might still be a chance. That was the doctor's advice. I had a tumor in my brain, and lately, I'd been fainting frequently. Sometimes my vision went completely black, and I couldn't see anything. The doctor said the tumor was pressing on my optic nerve, and I could eventually go blind. I wasn't ready to die yet, but the condition was worse than I thought. All I could do now was delay it as much as possible. As for Sarah, well, forget it. As soon as I got off the plane, Sarah called me. "Alex, what's your problem? What's all this about?" Her voice was hoarse and angry. I raised an eyebrow and looked at the clear sky. The weather was perfect, and my mood lifted a bit. Sarah, yesterday was my birthday. There was a pause on the other end before she said, "Sorry, I know you closed the deal for the B-City project. Congrats." At that moment, I was surprisingly calm. "Sign the papers. I'll be back in a month." To my surprise, Sarah didn't get angry. Instead, she said lightly, "If you're in a bad mood, it's good for you to get away for a while. As for the divorce, let's not talk about it." But she had already hung up. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. Immediately, I got a notification on my phone. She had transferred a large sum of money to me, enough to live comfortably for a month. Such a pity. I didn't have time anymore. After handling the paperwork at the hospital, I visited my old school. This was my alma mater, where I had followed Sarah to a prestigious university. Spending 4 years here felt like just yesterday, walking down the same familiar tree-lined avenue. I couldn't help but think of the times I'd create accidental encounters with Sarah. Every time she'd smile faintly and say, "Alex, we've run into each other 3 times today. Do you have something you want to tell me?" I'd blush and stutter. "Do you like spare ribs? I'll cook for you." Having seen so many fancy things, Sarah was surprised that I would cook for her. 1 serving of sweet and sour spare ribs, and I won her over. Later, during a meal, we made our relationship official. She wiped her mouth and asked, "Want to try?" Suddenly, my head throbbed with pain and I crouched down. The pain spread from my head and my vision went black again. I quickly took 2 pills and it took a long time for the pain to subside. Then, I got another message on my phone from the same number. "You think leaving won't solve anything? Alex, give up." This was the first message I'd received since the photos. Looks like he's getting anxious. I don't want her anymore. I blocked the number and finished walking around the campus alone, leaving behind the last bit of nostalgia before heading to the hospital. For the sake of treatment, they shaved my head. Staring at the mirror, I saw a man with a bruised face, and a sour feeling crept into my chest. But the other side didn't give up. Relentlessly. He kept sending me messages. I couldn't take it anymore until he sent a video. Sarah and Mike were at a bar under dim lights, acting very close, holding hands tightly, their smiles painfully obvious. "Sarah, this is what you meant by letting me get away for a while. It's just to make it easier for you to have fun." I took a deep breath. Another message came through. "Quit. You're not good enough for her." How amusing. I'd already quit. It was clear Sarah wasn't pleased about it. As a senior executive at a big company, any scandal about her personal life would ruin her career. Such a pity for this anonymous tipster. Clearly they hadn't thought this through. No, they did think about it, they just didn't care. Or maybe they thought I'd endure it and handle it privately. So they acted recklessly. A fool. Clown. I didn't respond and blocked the number. When Sarah called me, I had just charged hundreds of thousands to her card. Surgery fees and various expenses added up to quite a lot. The senior doctor looked at me and smiled warmly, saying, "Don't worry, kid. We'll get through this together." My nose tingled and I nearly cried. From Liangqing to the capital, I was alone. After entering the hospital, the doctors, upon learning I was here by myself, looked at me with pity. They took good care of me. I hadn't expected so much warmth from strangers when I was alone and far from home. And it was at this moment that Sarah called. "Alex, how are things over there? You've spent so much money. I hope you're feeling better." Her tone was cold. Even through the signal, I could tell she wasn't in a good mood. "What, feeling guilty now?" "Not at all." Sarah paused before saying, "When are you coming back? Mom and Dad keep asking where you are." It had been a week already. I'd done all the things I needed to, and only today had I checked into the hospital, so I certainly wasn't going back. Just then, the voice of a nurse called out, "Bed 28, blood draw." "You're at the hospital." I couldn't help but laugh at Sarah's question. It seemed she hadn't been home in days. If she had been, she would have seen my diagnosis report on the coffee table. "I'm feeling a bit off. Came to get checked." "Sarah, haven't you been home these days?" I waited for her explanation. As long as she gave me a reasonable one, I'd believe her. Sarah paused for a moment before responding. I've been busy lately, staying at the company or with Mike. It was a question, but a statement. Just then I received more photos on my phone, time-stamped from last night. Sarah was fast asleep, and there was a man holding her. The two of them were hugging tightly, soundly asleep in each other's arms, looking peaceful and content. I couldn't help but sneer. Have you signed the divorce papers? This 300,000? Consider it part of the asset division. Sarah was furious. Don't you even think about it, Alex. What are you causing a fuss over? I've told you a million times. He's just a friend. You've been sitting at home all day. Your brain's probably gone numb. I'm telling you, stop now. Enough already. I wasn't angry at all. Sarah, if one day I die, will you be sad? No. Alex, come back. We need to talk. I sighed. Why was getting a divorce so complicated? I was about to hang up when Mike's voice came through. Sarah, is he suspecting me again? Ugh, I knew I shouldn't have come back. Alex is too petty. Don't worry about him. I think he's just bored with his good life. I didn't catch the rest of what they said. I hung up the phone immediately. A dull pain surged in my head, and I fought off the dizziness. I opened WeChat and posted a status. I'm leaving, giving you guys space, tagging Sarah and Mike. I'm the patient, so let them think I'm petty. Sarah had just closed the B-City project. By doing this, I immediately caused the two companies to suspend their collaboration. While waiting for my test results, I went to the small garden behind the hospital, took a few photos of myself, and posted them on my moments. The sun's nice. The view here is great. Almost immediately, Sarah called. Alex, you're disgusting. You really want to ruin me, don't you? Why don't you just die? When I heard Sarah's curses over the phone, I didn't react right away. I just felt like something inside me snapped. Then, I seemed to hear someone shouting for a doctor, followed by Sarah's impatient voice. Alex, what are you acting for now? When I woke up again, the doctor was looking at me seriously. Alex, where's your family? I don't have any family. Just tell me. I can take it. My parents divorced when I was 10 and remarried someone else. Since then, I'd been alone. I'd gotten used to solitude. And of course, I was used to handling everything on my own. The doctor's eyes flashed with a hint of sympathy before he said, The test results aren't good. The brain tumor is growing rapidly. With surgery, the survival rate is only about 30%. But if you don't undergo surgery, my heart sinks. I looked at him. Tell me, how long do I have left? The doctor pursed his lips. Without intervention, 3 months, or even less. I knew that 3 months might be optimistic. This tumor grew too quickly. The attacks had been becoming more frequent. From dizziness at first to now headaches and even brief moments of blindness. I knew the doctor wasn't exaggerating. Dr. Chen, you're still young. You have to have hope. The doctor's encouragement made me smile faintly. I nodded. I decided to go ahead with the surgery. A 30% chance. It was worth the gamble. When I agreed to the surgery, the doctor quickly developed a plan and I cooperated fully. However, such a major surgery required a family member's signature. I insisted on signing it myself and wrote a statement that if anything went wrong, I wouldn't hold the hospital responsible. By the time everything was settled, 3 days had passed. The news was spreading like wildfire online, with people discussing my relationship with Sarah. Some even posted pictures of Sarah and me on our wedding day, along with photos of her with Mike. A huge uproar ensued. I was in the hospital and rarely checked my phone, but I could see the notifications. I swear I didn't post those photos, but seeing them still caused a sharp pain in my chest. The next moment, a wave of intense pain hit my head. I couldn't stop myself from curling up, my body arching like a shrimp, cold sweat pouring down my face. In the photos, Sarah was revealing a bit of her shoulder, and Mike was leaning down to rest his head against her neck. The intimacy between them was clear. No one would doubt that they had something going on. I lay there in pain, my face drained of color, and my vision went black. That's when Sarah called. I mustered all my strength to lift my hand and answer the phone. Sarah's voice rushed in. Are you crazy? Hurry up and come back. Explain yourself right now. The company suspended me because of this. Alex, are you crazy? Hurry up and come back. Explain yourself right now. The company suspended me because of this. Alex, are you happy now? I bit my lip, enduring the pain as I said, Sarah, let's get a divorce. If you leave me, then you can be with him openly. Why deceive yourself? You wish. Alex, even if you die, you're still mine. She hung up. I couldn't hold on any longer and passed out. When I woke up, the room was quiet. I looked up and realized my vision was blurry. I quickly called for the doctor. Dr. Chen, your condition can't wait. It's progressing rapidly. I fell silent. After a moment, I decided to go ahead with the surgery. No matter what, I wouldn't regret it. When Sarah scolded me, I wasn't angry. I just felt a little sad. She hadn't even divorced me yet, and now there was a storm of online abuse. I was being dragged into this mess and becoming the object of sympathy. To be honest, I didn't want so much attention. I just didn't want the person who posted those photos to feel so smug. Half an hour later, I was wheeled into the operating room and given an anesthetic. After that, I don't remember anything. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at my home in Sea City. When I saw Sarah, I froze. How did I get back? Did the surgery succeed? Sarah, Before I could finish, Sarah stood up and walked toward me. But she walked right through me. I was stunned and too scared to make a sound. It took me a while to realize she couldn't see me. I looked at my hands, wanting to touch Sarah, but grabbed nothing. In that moment, I was stunned. I had died. I died on the operating table. The tumor was even larger than the doctor had anticipated. During the craniotomy, the pressure caused a blood vessel to rupture, and despite all efforts, the surgery failed. The 30% chance of a miracle didn't happen. I was a little dazed for a moment, then remembered that I hadn't yet divorced. What a pity, I thought. Sarah would still have to deal with it because of my WeChat. The netizens went into full investigation mode, causing a lot of trouble for Sarah. Just like now, she was impatiently opening the door, letting Mike in, and the two of them were discussing how to handle things. I didn't want to listen, but as I was about to leave, I heard Mike say, "Let Alex clarify this. It's better than 1,000 words from us. Give him money, whatever conditions he asks for. Otherwise, you won't keep your position. There are plenty of people at the company watching you." Let me clarify? That's not possible. I'm dead. How can I help you? I sat on the sofa watching Sarah try calling me, but my phone remained off. That's right. I'm dead. Who's going to charge my phone? Sarah's face grew more and more troubled as she couldn't reach me. Finally, she couldn't hold it in and smashed the phone. Bastard, he did this on purpose. Even now, she was still blaming me, but I was curious. What happened to my diagnosis? Looking around, I couldn't find that piece of paper, but I clearly remembered leaving it on the table when I left. Seeing Sarah getting angrier, Mike patted her shoulder. Sarah, why don't we just announce it now? Only like this can we get through this smoothly. If Alex isn't answering, it's clear he doesn't care. Since he's not coming back, Sarah interrupted him. No, not now. I watched her, surprised. I had assumed that they'd already crossed the line, and even if they announced it now, I would have believed it. But Sarah actually refused. A flicker of shadow passed through Mike's eyes. Sarah, are you in love with him? You only married him to make your parents happy. I was stunned for a moment, then bitterly smiled. Yes, from the very beginning, I knew it was all just a formality. I had pursued Sarah for 3 years before she agreed to date me. After graduation, I worried she might want to break up, so I settled in this city, working hard to take on jobs just to give her a grand wedding. On the day I proposed, Sarah said, Alex, I'm not interested in all that. It's just marriage. We'll just get the license and have a simple meal. Keep it simple. At the time, I felt a little regretful. But when I thought about Sarah becoming my wife, I agreed. On the day we registered our marriage, I smiled like a fool, secretly taking a photo of Sarah and me and developing it to hide in my photo album. After marriage, I didn't interact much with her parents. We only spoke occasionally, and they'd remind me to take good care of Sarah. Now that I was dead, Sarah had become a widow. That term didn't sound good, and her family would surely be furious. Sarah took a deep breath. Let me think about it, Sarah. If you hesitate any longer, the company might give up on you completely. Mike's words made me curious. Were the netizens really that powerful? Or had they already crossed the moral line and gotten together? Otherwise, why would things have gotten so serious? Sarah still insisted. She sent Mike away, and as soon as she sat down, she received a phone call. I looked and saw my name in the contact details. Wait, I'm dead. How could I be calling her? She answered, and I heard Sarah's usual cold tone. Alex, are you done messing around yet? Is this Dr. Chen's partner? This is Capital Hospital. Alex's surgery failed and he passed away despite all efforts. Please come and complete the paperwork. I could hear the phone call as well. It seemed the hospital had found my phone and managed to contact Sarah after charging it. I had saved her under the contact name, Wife, which was probably how they were able to reach her so quickly. When Sarah heard the news, her face went pale. She was frozen for a long time. Are you listening? I'm listening. You're saying he passed away after the surgery? Sarah's voice was weak. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds before the voice replied, The tumor spread, and the surgery failed. He said he had no family, so he signed the surgery consent himself. Please come and take him home. After hanging up, Sarah was in a daze. She confirmed it wasn't a prank. I watched her face slowly drain of color as she rushed out of the house, and I was pulled along by an invisible force. 3 hours later, Sarah finally believed I was dead when she saw my body. The moment she saw the body, I was also shocked. My hair had been shaved off, and there were stitches, though cleaned. It still looked like an ugly mess on my head. The anesthetic had been administered during the surgery, and that was the last thing I remembered in this world. I only remembered the doctor encouraging me, Alex, hang in there. We'll create a miracle together. I smiled at him, and in just a few seconds, I fell asleep. Before losing consciousness, I thought to myself that dying like this wasn't too bad. At least I wouldn't suffer. Heaven had been kind to me. Though my condition had worsened quickly, I didn't suffer much. I just didn't have the chance to break things off with Sarah. Before the surgery, I had already decided that if I didn't die, I would travel and see the world. Forget all the unhappy things. If I died, it didn't matter. I donated all my money. You come into this world with nothing and leave with nothing. Looking at my body under the white cloth, I couldn't help but smile. So this is how I looked. Except for the ugly haircut, everything else wasn't too bad. Sarah fainted right then and there. When she woke up, she didn't speak a word. She just quietly changed my clothes, arranged the cremation, and completed all the formalities. And then took my ashes home. Seeing her in a daze, I couldn't help but sigh. Sarah, forget it. Just scatter me somewhere. I'll travel with the wind. Don't be sad. The surgery had risks. Now that I'm dead, you can be with him. Mike hadn't accompanied her. He had called several times, but Sarah didn't answer. I looked at Sarah in this state, puzzled. Was she mourning for me or for herself? I wanted to stay, but I couldn't leave her. I could only follow her back. Sarah picked a nice cemetery for me, expensive and spacious. It was all paid for with her money. She bought a double grave, but I thought it was a bit ominous. I would have preferred to be alone, but those who don't pay have no right to be picky. On the day of the burial, Sarah was the only one there. Her eyes were red as she remained silent. When we returned home, she lay on the sofa holding my picture, refusing to eat or drink. Seeing her like this, I couldn't help but laugh. What's the point? I'm dead. Who are you doing this for? I shook my head, unable to understand her. After 3 days, I couldn't stand it anymore and wanted to leave, but every time I got to the door, I was pulled back. Sigh, if she doesn't leave, I can't either. Sarah, let's go. I still want to see the world. I stood in front of Sarah, shaking my hand, but suddenly she looked me in the eyes and I stumbled back in shock. Sarah. But she didn't react. Thankfully, she couldn't see me. Sarah rummaged through my things at home. Before leaving, I had packed up all my luggage, and the only thing left was the book in the cabinet. I watched her walk into the study and immediately felt a sense of urgency. But then I thought, well, it's too late now. What was the point of hiding it? Soon, Sarah found the book in the cabinet, opened it, and after just a glance, her eyes turned red. March 1st, Sarah looked at me. She still remembers me. March 4th, I waited for her on this road for 2 hours, and finally she agreed to have dinner with me. March 5th, Sarah said she was busy and told me not to waste my time. I felt dejected, but I didn't give up. This book was written by me, titled Asterisk: The Days I Spent with Sarah Asterisk. It recorded the little moments between us, dating back to before I went to the Capitol. November 3rd, I received another photo. This time it was of Sarah and Mike together. They were embracing intimately. I made a decision. When I reach 100 photos, I'll say goodbye to Sarah and not stand in the way of her happiness. November 4th, that number sent me 2 more photos, and this time they were even more explicit. Sarah said she would come back for dinner, but instead, she went with Mike to a Western restaurant. November 8th, I bought Sarah a gift, but she never opened it. November 9th, the physical checkup results came out. Not so good. Should I tell her? I watched as Sarah cried uncontrollably, holding the book in her arms, sobbing in grief. I sighed and blew a gentle breath toward her. A gust of wind swept through the room, and Sarah jumped in surprise, quickly looking around. "Is that you, Alex? Is that you?" She collapsed to the floor, fragile like a glass doll. I shrugged. "It's all in the past. I'm not angry anymore." A week later, Mike came. When he saw Sarah in this condition, he was shocked. "Why do you look like this?" Sarah shook her head. "What are you doing here, Sarah? Did you even listen to what I told you last time? This is the company's decision. If you accept it like this, then all these years will be wasted." He brought with him a dismissal letter from the company, along with a demand for compensation. But Sarah didn't seem to care. She placed the paper aside and quietly said, "You did this." Mike froze. "What?" Sarah handed over my phone. I couldn't understand why she insisted on divorcing me, even leaving to do the surgery alone. Now I get it. It's all because of you, Mike. You were the one provoking him, sending those photos every day. Right, I remember only you used this number, these photos. Other than you, I can't think of anyone else who could know about them. When Sarah saw my phone, her face suddenly darkened. How could she not know? Who wouldn't be angry seeing these photos? She collapsed to the ground. No wonder he asked me to come back early on his birthday, to talk to me. But you forced me to celebrate, saying the birthday was no big deal. Alex, his birthday, to talk to me. But you forced me to celebrate, saying the birthday was no big deal. Alex must have been thoroughly disappointed to leave. Mike, you disgust me. Mike remained silent for a long time, then sneered. Sarah, you're such a hypocrite. Sarah was shocked. She didn't expect him to say this. I, on the other hand, heard this and thought he had a point. You can't always have it both ways. Mike continued to provoke her. You didn't love him. So what's the point of questioning me now? Don't tell me you're here to fight for him. What you care about is your career, your future. He held her tightly, his face full of excitement. We agreed to fight together. But now, for a month, you're like this. Just look at yourself. He dragged Sarah into the bathroom and forced her to look in the mirror. Looking at the woman in the mirror, worn out and exhausted, Sarah suddenly laughed bitterly. Mike, from the very beginning, I knew it was all about mutual use. Alex is not a greedy man, not like you. Mike froze for a moment, then laughed loudly. Greedy, so that's how you see me, Sarah? You, however, act all righteous, but we both know what you did to climb up. Sarah turned her head to face him, her eyes filled with fury. You're after the dean's daughter for your future. Don't think I don't know. I just made a wrong step and came back in time. Mike sneered. We both got what we wanted. Now I'm telling you, your career is what matters most. I just don't want to see you keep sinking like this. Giving up for a man is not worth it. As for the public opinion online, I've hired someone to deal with it. But you still need to issue a statement. If you don't, our project will be canceled. The company values this cooperation. I hope you'll think of the bigger picture. Sarah stared at him. You should go. Mike refused to leave. Give me a straight answer. I can't afford to miss this opportunity. I've waited so long for this day. If I lose it because of these baseless accusations, I'll have to start all over again. Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She raised her hand and slapped him. Baseless. If you didn't provoke him and send him those photos, he would never have sent that WeChat. The slap landed on Mike's face, and he was completely enraged. He shoved Sarah to the ground without hesitation. I was shocked and furious. I rushed forward to stop him, only to realize my hands couldn't reach him. Mike, how dare you? Looking at Sarah on the floor, Mike's eyes were full of disdain. What? Are you angry now? What about you? Aren't you the one who gave me the illusion? The signals to get close to you? Don't play innocent. Who doesn't know you got to your position because of that? Mike threw a piece of paper at her. If you don't issue a statement, it's either the fish or the net. He stormed out. I was curious, so I squatted down to look at the paper and suddenly felt a loud buzzing in my head. It was a guarantee letter. In Sarah's handwriting, back in university. Sarah had written this guarantee letter after being caught by the legitimate girlfriend of her senior for having an affair with him. I took a few steps back and couldn't help but shake my head. My last bit of sympathy for her vanished. Thinking back, I had pursued her for 3 years and was rejected every time. Then, on the night before my birthday, Sarah suddenly came to me with injuries on her face. When I asked who did this, she said it was an accident. There were rumors in the school at the time. I was so infatuated that I didn't care about them. Plus, Sarah agreed to date me, and I impulsively made it official. Now I realize I was just a backup plan to her after she had been scolded by the senior. She didn't want to deal with his girlfriend's trouble. I was so stupid. I turned around and entered the bedroom while Sarah's sobs echoed outside. At this moment, all I wanted was to leave, and also, I wanted to change my tombstone. Why hasn't the lawyer arrived yet? I paid a lot for this service. Why isn't it working? I sat alone in the bedroom, the sound of Sarah's crying in the living room giving me a headache. I decided to close my eyes and rest. After all, I couldn't leave. These past few days, Sarah had been wallowing in despair due to the love triangle, and the public opinion had been rapidly fermenting. Some even dug up the rumor that I was dead, which caused quite a stir. The wife was forced to death. The renowned corporate executive cheated with his best male friend. When this article came out, the internet went wild with constant insults flooding in. The first target was the official website of Sarah's company. Your company is bold, letting such a person be an executive. This woman is clearly promiscuous. Poor man, cheated on and left with a terminal illness. Sarah, the old green tea. She was a mistress in school, got beaten up for it, and then found herself a backup. That Mike isn't any better either. Trash man with trash woman? I looked at the comments on my phone, feeling a strange calm. The feelings I once had when I was young had almost vanished by now. I didn't want to know about Sarah and Mike's past. I just didn't want to stay anymore. When the police arrived, Sarah was completely drunk. Her company couldn't reach her, so they called the police. She was taken to the hospital, and I followed her there. Sarah had tried to commit suicide at home by taking pills, holding onto my book tightly in her hands. Luckily, she didn't succeed. When she opened her eyes, her pupils contracted, and she suddenly lunged at me. Alex, it's you, right? I was startled. Could she see me? He's dead, that voice. I turned around and saw the lawyer. Finally, he had arrived. Miss Sarah, I am Alex's lawyer. I have something to inform you. Upon hearing the lawyer's words, Sarah became agitated. Impossible! She collapsed to the ground, her eyes wide with shock. I'm not divorced from him yet. He wants to leave me. Miss Sarah, Alex has already entrusted me with handling the divorce case, but it was delayed. He said, let him go and let you go too. All the evidence of your improper relationship with Mike has been gathered. Alex hopes you won't hold him to the marriage anymore. Sarah slumped to the floor, and after a long while, she suddenly started laughing bitterly. Alex, really, you've given up on me completely, haven't you? The lawyer was someone I had hired. He was expensive, but worth it. When I first contacted him, he didn't take my case. I had to mortgage all the remaining money from the surgery and this apartment just to ensure that I would no longer have any ties with Sarah. Now, looking at it, my choice was right. He was direct and sharp with his words. Sarah didn't believe it. She was hysterical, but the lawyer just left a few papers with her and reminded her. This house has already been mortgaged. It will soon be auctioned off. I hope you can pack up and leave. After the lawyer left, Sarah stared at the papers, crying and laughing at the same time. Those were my will papers. When I found out that Sarah was with Mike, I knew I couldn't hold on anymore. This marriage, I had always been the one giving. Sarah had been indifferent. We had been married for 3 years with no children. She always said her career was more important and children could wait. I loved children and wanted to have a lively home, but she didn't want that, and I didn't force her. When I saw her go out with Mike to various events without a care, I felt jealous. She told me not to be so petty. It was all for work. I kept compromising and they kept taking advantage. Sarah didn't want to divorce. If her marriage as a corporate executive fell apart, her career would be affected. All her efforts were for herself. I was just a tool. I hated her, but there was nothing I could do. Luckily, I was sick. Death was my only escape. I watched Sarah torment herself with regret and guilt, yet I didn't feel any pain. The lawyer was indeed efficient. Soon my apartment was auctioned and Sarah was forced to move out. But what I didn't expect was that she went and bought it back. When she moved back in, Sarah appeared online, openly admitting to her affair with Mike. Exposing his dark secrets, the two of them started revealing each other's scandals. Sarah went into suicide mode and exposed all the industry secrets, dragging the company down with her. Mike was fired, and the company underwent major changes, suffering huge losses. The netizens watched the drama unfold, occasionally commenting, and in the end, it was clear that Sarah was the one at fault. After everything was done, she held my book, caressed my portrait, and swallowed sleeping pills. Before dying, she looked at my figure, and her eyes suddenly lit up, and I turned and floated away. I was free. After Sarah died, the lawyer came to handle the matter. Thankfully, she agreed to bury me alone, changed my tombstone, and returned my freedom. I sighed deeply. Sarah, in this life, I was just unlucky to meet you. I hope in the next life I never encounter you again.